Radio Komunitas Balai Budaya Minomartani. Radio Budaya, Radio Warga, Radio Kita Bersama.
Dari Komplek Balai Budaya Minomartani Ngaglik Rempu. Inilah Radio BBM. Jaringan Radio Komunitas Yogyakarta.
Community Radio BBM FM, Creation for Nation.
Radio Komunitas BBM FM. Dukunglah budaya Indonesia.
Selamat sore warga budaya. Good afternoon, cultural citizens. I am Melike, and you're listening to Indonesia and Me, where we come together every Friday to discuss Indonesian cultures in plural and my encounters and experiences with them. Briefly about me, I am an intern at UGM, which is part of my master's program in intercultural communication at Utrecht University in the Netherlands. I've lived in the Netherlands for the past 5 years, and I'm born and raised in Denmark, and my roots are Turkish. So that is my cultural cocktail. Today's broadcast is about Pancasila, which is the philosophical basis of an independent Indonesia. And for the ones that are new to Pancasila, let me just repeat that again. Pancasila is the philosophical basis of an independent Indonesia. So Pancasila is obviously also new to me. I've been in Indonesia for almost 3 weeks. So I do invite and I do encourage anyone listening who know more about Pancasila than I do to correct me where I might be wrong or add any insightful information on Pancasila. You can do this via YouTube. Because Pancasila is new to me, I also want to upfront apologize for any misperceptions, misrepresentations, or misunderstandings. With this broadcast, I want to share what I know to be true about Pancasila and what I have experienced. Obviously, knowing that I have limited information. And I want to also share what Pancasila means to other people in my network who have wanted to comment on what Pancasila means to them. Yesterday on Pancasila Day, I had the honor to join a very beautiful ceremony at UGM, where all teachers and staff joined the ceremony. So that was my sort of real life experience with Pancasila. So let's dive into it. What is Pancasila? Well, Pancasila consists of two words, pancha, which means five, and sila, which means principles. The words come from Sanskrit, which to my knowledge is the sacred language of Hinduism and Buddhism. The five principles, so Panchasila, were publicly announced for the first time on June 1st in 1945 by Sukarno, who was the first Indonesian president who during the occupation of Indonesia was an independence activist. What was interesting to me was that Sukarno was Muslim, so with my limited information, I was wondering why Panchasila was formulated in Sanskrit. Why would a Muslim man announce the nation's principles in a language that is sacred to other religions and beliefs than his own? So, curiously asking about this and looking into this, what I found out is that Sanskrit and Old Javanese, also refers to as Kawi, quite resemble each other, in that Old Javanese borrows vocabulary from Sanskrit. And this is such an interesting learning to me. And it's such a good example of how I continuously try to make sense of linguistic and cultural, of this linguistic and cultural melting pot called Indonesia. And that I maybe mistakenly view the languages and cultures as separate units, living side by side rather than actually being a melting pot. So what I'm describing is maybe more a mosaic than a melting pot. And that is maybe how I best know linguistic and cultural diversity as a mosaic, cultures and languages living side by side. But what I experience here is rather different, and it's rather interesting, because what I experience here is a melting pot in the sense of languages and cultures evolving and growing together. And that to me is a very unique experience. I acknowledge that other people, other listeners might have a different perspective. But I've always been I've always lived in rather monocultural societies where, yes, there are other cultures. Yes, there are other languages. But as I said, they tend to live side by side. And what I mean, and what I try to illustrate with the Sanskrit example is the influence of each other. So let's dive into the 5 principles which constitute Panchasila. Well, the first one is translated into the belief in the one and only God. To my understanding, this is the most debated principle, suggesting that it supports only one religion, and that is, or supports not only one religion, but that supports religions which only believe in one God. So I've been asking about this, and I've been curious to hear if that is even maybe the correct translation, because sometimes we translate a language and we don't understand what the implication of that translation. And what I've found out, what again people in my network have told me, is that this might not be the best translation. Maybe this translation doesn't serve the principle. And another understanding, or sort of a better translation, is to view this principle as a token of tolerance, actually respecting the many different religions and beliefs in Indonesia, so that it's not limited to beliefs and religions that worship only one God. The second principle is translated into just and civilized humanity. And this I best describe as mutual respect. If there are other suggestions to how to better understand this, as I said, please do comment. The third principle is translated into the unity of Indonesia, which refers to the many kingdoms as one nation. Again, we're talking about a nation with multiple cultures, multiple languages, multiple beliefs. And this principle emphasizes that with tolerance and with respect, all the kingdoms can be united into one nation. I find that very beautiful. The fourth principle is a rather long one, but it comes down to democracy. The principle is translated into democracy guided by the inner wisdom in the unanimity arising of deliberations among representatives. Again, it's a long principle. It comes down to democracy. So it comes down to a social way of ruling the country. The last principle is translated into social justice for the whole of the people of Indonesia. I think this is a very good principle, and I think every nation should put this principle as a way of living, as a way of respect for each other. Before diving further into the principles and the emblem, I want to take a short break, and then I'll be right back with you.
Dari Komplek Balai Budaya Minomartani Ngaglik Lembang, inilah Radio BBM, Jaringan Radio Komunitas Yogyakarta.
Community Radio BBM FM, Creation for Nation.
Selamat sore warga budaya, and welcome back to today's broadcast on Pancasila. We've discussed the five principles, and now I want to share a bit on the emblem and what it means, because it's quite significant and spectacular, I think. The five principles that I just mentioned are illustrated on the national emblem of Indonesia, which is also called Garuda Pancasila. And Garuda on the emblem is a strong eagle holding a shield, illustrating the five principles, and also holding with its claws a white ribbon. Originally, Garuda is the vehicle of the Hindu god Vishnu, and Garuda in this sense has more human features. And to my knowledge, this was also how it was first designed for the emblem. But again, as I mentioned before, there are several religions coming into play here, and to accommodate the Islamic values of avoiding mythical creatures, the design of the shield was edited. To me, this is again such an interesting mix of beliefs and cultures, and about respect and tolerance, of how to make sure that things are accommodated in a way to respect different beliefs. And further on, as I said, Garuda on the emblem has an eagle depiction, and it holds with his claws a white ribbon. And on the ribbon, it has the national motto that I'm going to try to pronounce, and I hope I'm going to do it correctly. It says, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, which can be loosely translated into unity in diversity. And I think that's such a beautiful thing that I want to repeat it. Unity in diversity. I think usually unity and diversity, they tend to go in very different conversations. They tend to go as if you can have unity or you can have diversity. And I find it very beautiful to put these in the same sentence as one not actually going without the other. What's very smart is that Garuda's feathers are arranged in a way to represent the date 17th of August, 1945. And some of you might think, why isn't it June 1st, 1945? Well, 17th of August is a very, very big date. It's the day on which Indonesia's independence was proclaimed. And I've asked around about this, and it appears to me that this day is celebrated even bigger than Pancasila. I won't be here for the Independence Day, which is such a pity, but I hear that it is a massive celebration in the streets, in people's homes, privately, in institutions. I won't be here for the day, as I said, but it will be very interesting to share with you maybe what that day is all about. As I said, on the shield that Garuda holds, the 5 principles are illustrated, and I just briefly want to share with you what those illustrations are. I'm sure that they are very beautiful explanations to all the illustrations. I know them only very limited, only very basic, but I still do want to share them so that if any of you look up the Pancasila emblem and Garuda, then you will maybe understand the illustrations. So the first belief is illustrated with a star. And again, the first belief is in the belief of one God. But as I said, that is better translated as into the tolerance of religions. So that is illustrated with a star that's in the middle of the shield. Then just and civilized humanity, which is the second principle, is illustrated with a chain. And also the chain and the links between the chain, that all adds up to 17. Again, the 17th of August. Then the third principle, the unity of Indonesia, is illustrated with a banyan tree. And why a banyan tree is, again, to my knowledge, because the banyan tree has roots that are very complex, but they're also showing. They're showing, so they're above the ground. And again, this refers to the many kingdoms as one nation. So yeah, that you will find the tree symbolizing unity of Indonesia. Then the democracy principle is illustrated with a bull, because a bull is believed to be a social animal. So again, as I said, democracy is a social way of ruling a nation. The last principle, social justice for the whole of the people of Indonesia, is illustrated with rice and cotton. So those were the 5 illustrations for the 5 principles. What I want to end today's broadcast with, as I said, I have reached out to my network and I have asked a bit about what Pancasila means to them. And I did that because I don't want to be, obviously, the only one sharing on such a special topic that I'm very new to. The first one I want to mention is my colleague Anggun, who said to me that for her, Pancasila is the foundation of everyday life. In accordance with the first principle, she said, it's about tolerance between religious communities in Indonesia. And she even gave an example. She said, well, on Eid al-Fitr, my neighbors wish me happy Eid, and on Christmas, I wish them a Merry Christmas. So that was just such a beautiful example of how you can respect and tolerate each other's beliefs. Then my mentor at BBM, Pak Kun, he said to me in a very brief message, he said, Pancasila, that's the thing that unites us. We Indonesians should be very proud of this. And I thought it was such a beautiful way to simply put that these principles, these 5 principles, can unite a nation of such diverse beliefs, religions, cultures, languages. So I wanted to share that as well. And lastly, I want to share an audio which is recorded by a fellow student of mine from Utrecht University. He's called Bariki, and Bariki is from Indonesia. And in a short voice message, he shares what Pancasila means to him, and he even reflects on what Pancasila means for him now that he lives in the Netherlands. So I found that very interesting, and here it comes.
As all Indonesians know, that Pancasila is the foundation and the constitution of the country. And I think that it is really special because I don't think that other countries have such thing as Pancasila. And I think it's because they don't have diversity like Indonesia has. Also, Indonesia was once kingdoms, but now it is one single country. And I believe that Pancasila is the reason we are all united regardless of our differences. And I think it's worth celebrating because it is a celebration of unity and diversity of the country. And living in the Netherlands makes me realize that Indonesia is really diverse and rich in terms of culture. And Netherlands is a monoculture country. And I, as Indonesian, compared to foreigners, I'm very used to facing diversity, whether it's religion, ethnicity, political, race, and language. And I think Pancasila gives me a very, it opens my mind as an Indonesian living abroad.
Thank you for listening to this voice message of Bariki. I hope you resonate with it, and I'm curious to hear some of your thoughts. Before closing today's broadcast, I do want to acknowledge the fact that any non-supportive statements on Pancasila are forbidden by the government. I therefore do not reject that the broadcast could have been a bit nuanced if this had not been the case. The conversations I've had with people have been very sincere. But nevertheless, I do want to acknowledge that this is a fact. That is it for today. As I said, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this. For now, there is nothing left for me to say, but terima kasih warga budaya for listening and for being curious with me. I'm curious to hear your thoughts and your input. Have a great night. Sampai jumpa di siaran berikutnya. Bye-bye.
Dari Komplek Balai Budaya Minomartani Ngaglik Sleman. Inilah Radio BBM, Jaringan Radio Komunitas Yogyakarta.
Community Radio BBM FM, Creation for Nation.
Radio Komunitas BBM FM. Dukunglah budaya Indonesia.
Terima kasih. Anda sedang mendengarkan Radio Komunitas BBM FM 107,7 MHz.
Dipancarkan dari kawasan Balai Budaya Minomartani, Radio Komunitas BBM.